another album review. Today we'll be going over David Gilmour's Rattle That Lock. David Gilmour always seems to be the artist that no matter what, when he hits his first note, you instantly recognize it. And it's no different with Rattle That Lock. As a matter of fact, the entire album, you could just tell straightforward that it is a David Gilmour effort. Even though it does have some of these Floydier areas in it, it definitely seems as though David is finding his own voice, especially with the title track, in which, you know, it has a very dancey feel to it. I think the only thing that really links, you know, David Gilmour to the Pink Floyd, or at least with this album, is the fact that his guitar will always sound like David Gilmour, you know. And that, I think that really is the only thing that kind of, you know, adds a sense of nostalgia to his work, you know. As for David Gilmour and Rattle That Lock as a whole, you know, the album itself is definitely a step in a different direction. Not to say it doesn't sound similar to, you know, About Face or On an Island, or even David Gilmour's self-titled album. You know, there's definitely these idiosyncratic parts to it that kind of mirrored those albums. And I feel as though David Gilmour kind of took things from each individual album and then crammed them into this one, which is really, really cool. The songwriting on this album alone is really, really well thought out. And I think David Gilmour probably, I mean, obviously it took countless years to make this album, took his time to make it a complete work and a brilliant work in itself. From the intro of this album, you could really tell that David Gilmour wants to show that, you know, his guitar playing has not slowed down at all. It's still as epic as it ever was. And it slowly segues into another track, which is the title track of Rattle That Lock, which kind of shows David Gilmour's more dancey songs. And then after that song, it also turns into yet another song, which has this weird piano intro to it. And yet again, it doesn't really lend itself to being all about guitar. You know, I feel a lot of guitar players make their albums to be these bluesy kind of masterpieces where it's all about guitar. David Gilmour was never that kind of guitar player. He really lends himself to being a master of musicality and harmony and ambience, and, you know, less is more. And every song on this album tends to find itself doing that sort of thing where it nicely segues into one another. But I think really with this album, the thing that really shined through is the fact that David Gilmour is an amazing songwriter in himself. I think it was something that was very overlooked with Pink Floyd, how great of a songwriter he actually was. And, you know, how great his voice actually was. You know, having Roger Waters being such a prolific songwriter and making, you know, these great albums such as The Wall and The Final Cut, you know, to add to that. But really, you know, David Gilmour was the one that wrote a lot of music on Dark Side of the Moon, which was a big album. You know, it's still on the top 10 list. And I think that really shines through on Rattle That Lock about how great of a songwriter he actually was. Every song on this album is a great song, and it has great songwriting to it. And he really has an eye and detail for writing the catchier kind of things on this record. There's a lot of guitar parts I found. I don't know if they're purposely Easter egged or maybe he just didn't think about it, but there's a lot of things on this album that kind of do also lend themselves back to the old Floyd area. 12-string guitars, maybe, you know, playing off something from a Pink Floyd song, or, you know, having a slide guitar make the same lick that might have been on a Pink Floyd record. You know, it kind of echoes these memories and journeys maybe through David Gilmour's life. and it's really, really interesting the way that it came about and everything like that. Apparently, it was recorded all on his home studio, which is a boat. If any of you audiophiles are wondering what studio David Gilmour did this on, it was actually recorded on his own personal boat with his own personal studio gear, and it's taken almost 10 years to do. And I thought also the thing that was interesting was, David Gilmour always tends to lend himself out to people, like playing on Pete Townsend records, and I believe he played on a couple of different live albums of people and everything, and just lending himself out. But on this record, it seems to be like he was very insular, he kind of shielded himself from having any other outside influence. That way, it could be a complete David Gilmour work. The thing I also found very interesting about this record was the fact that the production was so clean and crisp. It was almost like as if you haven't heard something like that in quite some time. And yet again, not to compare David Gilmour to Pink Floyd, but Pink Floyd always had records where it was very clean and crisp. And I think with the passing of Richard Wright and everybody, as we've seen this year, getting older and slowly, passing away and time changing, this album probably had to be done maybe in David Gilmour's mind, and that seems to be the overall theme, is of love, life, loss, death, rebirth, and his lyrics are very well written, as far as simplicity. He knows how to write words and write songs that are so simple, but yet they hit you right away. And less is more. Sometimes the less things are more complex than having a ton of orchestrations and everything. Which, by the way, I believe it's on the third song. It starts off with a slow acoustic guitar, and then it slowly builds. And it's one of the first actual rock albums where I've heard accordion and oboe and all sorts of things on it, and it sounded so amazing and great. It sounded like a old-fashioned gypsy waltz on top of a Pink Floyd song, which is really ingenious. I really love the fact that David Gilmour thinks of things like that to put on record, and then come out with it for a different like listening experience. And it's always sort of been that way with him on all of his records, from the first to About Face to On an Island. It always seems to be like there's something different about this record that most people are not going to think are going to be on there for David Gilmour. And it's awesome because David Gilmour can go maybe the route of Robin Trower or Joe Bonamassa and just make these blues records where you can hear them play amazing, blues guitar, or just chop out the same kind of thing, over and over and over again. But he always makes a experience for all of his fans and everyone in the world to hear and understand. I think out of all the Floyd material, David Gilmour always made something a little more understandable than everybody else did. It always seemed a little bit more down to earth, even though he was very into experimenting, and I think that really shines through on this record as far as, I'm going to make something that everybody else is going to enjoy and kind of grasp really, really, really well. And he really did it really, really, really well. So that is my review of David Gilmour's Rattle That Lock. And please leave a comment below, and feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and we hope to hear from you all soon. Bye.